CM Sportsnet presents Sports Talk at Island Green.
Welcome to another edition of Sports Talk at the Island Green right here on Carroll Media Center. We're live from the Island Green in Westminster, Maryland. I'm Avery Newport, back once again with Skylar Foltz, head coach of McDaniel Football. Skylar, thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely.
So we got a home game this past weekend against Muhlenberg. We're well into Centennial Conference play at this point in the football season, and it was a loss for you guys at home. 34-6 was the final score in this one, but the score I don't think is indicative of how the game actually played out. This game went for you in this past weekend.
When you look at it, it was a tale of two halves. The first half is kind of what we were looking to have kind of from a game standpoint. We wanted to try to control the football a little bit, make sure the defense kind of dug their heels in, and really against a really good Muhlenberg offense is really try to slow them down. You're not necessarily going to be able to stop them, but really make them not be as explosive as what they've been in previous weeks. The first quarter was exactly that, and we even had the special teams help us. We had a huge kickoff return, things like that. It was working in our way, and then we started hitting the road bumps, one after another. We got backed up inside our 5. I think it was like 3 straight drives. And Angel had a nice long run, negated by a penalty, bring us back, right? So it was kind of a comedy of errors, little mistakes that really took us out of the game. But when you go into the locker room at halftime and you're only down 1 score against a Muhlenberg team, you want to be excited and want to go into the second half feeling like, hey, you're able to do this. The third quarter was a little bit of a battle, back and forth. We really struggled on offense. Defense kept playing their way. And then by the fourth quarter time, you look at the time of possession, it really just wore down our defense a little bit because that was when Muhlenberg got most of the rushing yards and ended up that's where they got their scores going into the end of the game. So really was a tale of two halves for us, and we're pleased with the way the guys fought every single play. We just have to keep going back to the drawing board and clean up some of the little mistakes because when you watch a lot of the plays, especially on offense, it was 6 inches here. Right. It was one guy not doing his job this side. And those are the little things with some inexperience and some guys playing first time. You kind of have to deal with those and try to grow from them. Right.
I mean, when you look at the box score today, obviously, 34-6 is not the ideal outcome, but this was a 7-6 game at halftime. As you mentioned, a tale of two halves. The first half, you were just trailing by 1 point to a team that won 10 games last year, one of the best teams in the conference. And by the end of the third, it was still 7-6. That was that score. So you guys were neck and neck all the way through, and the fourth quarter ultimately really made the difference. But I think that's got to be a great confidence booster for you guys that you were able to stay so competitive with a top-ranked team like Muhlenberg for 3 whole quarters. Really, I think more than just a tale of two halves. It was a tale of 3 quarters compared to 1 quarter because through 3 quarters, you guys were neck and neck. You were this close, really, really. I mean, it was very impressive to see that you were able to hang with them for as long as you did. And, again, the fourth quarter, those things happen against a good Muhlenberg team. But the fact that you stayed that competitive, and it was really anyone's game through 3 quarters, I think, there's a lot of promise there.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't want to take any moral victories. I know I've said that before. But in years past, against a really good Muhlenberg team, that score ends up being that at halftime, right? So that's the growth that our guys are having. That's the belief that they have in themselves. We just have a couple of things we got to work on, especially with a lot of young guys playing at some spots, especially on offense. The one thing I talk to the guys about is you can see the difference between year 2 in Coach Piercy's defense, the growth that they've shown from last year to this year, and you can see the inexperience of us in year 1 on offense. Yep. So it's the unfortunate thing. It puts our defense in a bad spot at times. But when you look at it, if we could just play complementary football just a little bit better, because a couple of those times the defense made some good stops, and that's how we ended up with the ball so close to our own end zone. If we get 2 first downs, we were able to flip the field. And now we just got in a bad field position game at that point, and it's kind of hard to overcome those things.
Yeah, but as you mentioned, the defense was phenomenal through 3 quarters. And let's talk a little bit about the impact that they've had. And you mentioned that now that they've had almost another full year under defensive coach Dale Piercy, they've had more time to learn his system and adjust to things. And you can see that work they're putting in off the field is really starting to turn into some results on the field. I mean, holding a Muhlenberg offense that was one of the top scoring offenses in all of Division III college football that had just lost a game the last week scoring 50 points, which is super rare. And to hold them to 7 points through 3 quarters is a phenomenal achievement. Let's talk a little bit about what your thoughts are about the defense's impact this past weekend.
So going into it, we wanted to challenge the guys. I know I talked to them last week, and we thought they've been playing really, really well, but now you're playing the best of the best. I think going into last week, Muhlenberg was top 10 nationally in like 4 different statistics. So you know they're coming with high power, and they're very explosive. They have a lot of plays of 50, 60 yards. They had one play, I think, against Moravian, which was like 97 yards for a touchdown. So you're going against a real high-powered offense. So it was, now can we step up to the challenge, right? You've played really well the first couple of weeks of the year, but now you're getting to the best of the best you're going to see. Can you raise your play to the next level? And they really did that. And you get to the fourth quarter and you look at the time of possession, it starts really changing there.
Right.
And we kept giving them some short fields, and they didn't have to drive 85, 90 yards, right? They only had to go 50, 55, 40 a couple of times, and that's where those scores end up getting us. So the defense really stepped up. They played really, really well, and there's some of those plays they even think they'd like to take back, right? Misalignments, just not playing the call correctly, and those are some of the mistakes that happen with some of the inexperiences on defense. And we're still starting a freshman inside linebacker. We're starting a sophomore weak side linebacker. Those mistakes are going to happen, but can they learn from them and continue to rise their play week in and week out? And we think they can do it.
Yeah, Tavon LeGrand is another guy that I want to bring up here. Keeping with the defensive theme, was nominated for Defensive Player of the Week in the Centennial Conference. Just had a phenomenal game once again this past weekend. And you mentioned he's young, he's inexperienced, he's just a freshman, but already he's starting to receive attention from the rest of the conference. He's starting to gain some accolades. Talk a little bit about his impact on the defense, not just in this game, but what you've seen from him throughout the season so far.
You can see the growth week in and week out. Early on in the year, he's just playing football because that's what he's always done. And he's played football at a high level at a really, really good school in Pennsylvania. But now you're starting to see him learn how to prepare like a college football player. You're starting to see him ask the right questions that he should be asking from his position. And you're starting to see those little mistakes he made week 1 and week 2 start dwindling away. Yeah. And that's what you want to see at this point in the year. You don't want to see him hit that mid-year slump. You want to see him continue on the rise. And he's really stepping up to the challenge. And it's also helping everyone else around him as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, we've talked a lot about game experience so far the last couple of weeks, and how you got a lot of young guys on the defensive end that are just starting to gain those game reps. But he's an outlier, I think, in a lot of ways, because he's just as young as all those other guys we've mentioned. But it looks like he's already got a senior level of experience out there with how he plays, with his intelligence, his nose for the ball. I mean, I've been extremely impressed by him through the first couple of weeks, and I'm excited to see how he continues to add on to his freshman season.
And that's the exciting thing is when you sit back and you look and you watch the film and you're like, hey, you made that mistake last week. This week you didn't make that mistake. Yeah, now, can we continue to see that going forward? And then it's also exciting, like, you try not to look too far ahead, but you're like, what are you going to look like when you're a 21-year-old senior? Physically, right? Like the development that's going to happen, right? The football knowledge is going to get there, right? We're always going to coach that. We're going to get in the offseason and those things, but during the heart and the dead of winter, what are you going to do to make yourself be a better athlete, right? And that's the exciting thing going forwards, because you look at guys, especially when they're young, and you're like, the football knowledge will get there, you'll get more experience, but man, what are you going to look like when you're older?
Right, yeah, right. So it's really that 1-2 punch, right? Like the physical development, because you still got 3 more years left under your defense, and then, just continuing to add on to those game reps and build up that game experience, which he's already done a phenomenal job at already just through 5 games of his college career. Very impressive game, not just this past weekend for LeGrand, but all throughout the season so far. Let's switch gears now and talk about the offense, which we saw mostly Angel Granado under center for McDaniel this past weekend. Not a surprise. I figured that Angel would get most of the reps, but saw a little bit of a little twist, if you want to put it that way. We saw Jaden Booker get in the game, get a couple throws in as well late, and he was 3 for 4 on his 4 attempts, 25 yards passing for the true freshman quarterback. So tell me a little bit about that decision-making going into this weekend. Did you think that Booker was going to get some time? Did you rely on Angel for most of the week? Did you expect that Angel would be leading the way? Kind of tell me a little bit about what the quarterback situation was like in your mind before this game.
That was a little bit more of preservation at that point in the game, right? When you look at it, we're down a couple scores. There's only 3 minutes left, and you got to weigh the cost, right? You want Angel to continue to get reps and continue to develop, but at that point in the game, we're probably not going to come back and win, right? And Jaden's been doing a great job practicing, growing. He went from doing scout team work to raising himself up in the depth chart a little bit. So at that point, it's, do we want to risk Angel getting hurt? Like, are these 5 snaps you're going to get worth you possibly getting hurt, or should we give the freshman who's doing a really good job in developing and working harder in meetings, asking good questions, just give him a couple of reps running some of the base plays that we're going to do. So that was a little bit more of a preservation over top of the reps, right? If there would have been a little bit more time left in, it would have kept Angel in trying to continue to fight and battle and get the guys to gain a little bit of confidence going forward. But we did the same thing. Like we put a couple other guys in at some other positions just to relax them there at the end, knowing that the game's probably out of hand. Let's make this choice because they're going to do the same thing on defense, and see some of our young guys go against other guys that are of their same age, right, of the same development point, and give them a couple reps for us to look at and see on film and see kind of information. Do they know what they're doing? Are they going to give effort at that point? And we liked what we saw. A couple of guys did a really good job coming with some of the reps they got at the end of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll definitely keep an eye on what Booker has to offer, because it's a small sample size, only 4 passing attempts in the game, but he completed 3 of them for 25 yards, and he was able to get the offense moving towards the end of the game. So I'm excited to see how he continues to develop in the offense, and if he stays at that second position on the depth chart, or if there's some movement, who knows. But let's talk about Angel now, the starter coming into the day. Was 10 of 17 through the air, 104 yards, had a touchdown pass, brilliantly lofted pass to Kenneth Dempster, at a swing pass out of the backfield for a touchdown. But he did have an interception as well. But I think this was another positive performance, positive trajectory for Angel, because he only had the 1 turnover, mostly kept the ball out of harm's way, and was 10 of 17. I mean, that's a pretty solid completion percentage rate as well. He looked good throwing the ball through the air. It's just, as you mentioned, by the end of the game, the outcome was no longer in question, and I think, at that point, you want to preserve him, as you said, and make sure he doesn't get injured or anything, because he also had 19 rushing attempts in this game, too. So you used him, a lot of different ways, through the air and on the ground as well. So tell me a little bit about how you think he's been developing, what you've seen from him the last couple of weeks, now that he's really taken over the starting reins of the offense.
You can see the rust at times. There's a couple of things of just not getting multitude of reps, and some of the stuff we're doing running the football with him, like it just takes some experience, right? It takes some time to see it and develop and kind of learn the nuances of it, and that shows up at times, right? I think what would help him is overall if we were able to run the ball a little bit more effectively across the board, whether it's called runs with him, read game, or one of the running backs doing a little bit more. I think that'll lighten things up and keep us a little bit more balanced. And then when you look at, again, some of his rushes were him scrambling, and the big one I'm really trying to get away from him is some of those sacks I think he can throw. He tries to make the great play because he knows he can make the good play, right? But sometimes the good play is the smart play. Right. It is just learning, getting it out, right? Understanding that punting the football is okay, right? That limits the turnovers. But then also some of the other ones is he's trying to make this huge, big play. Sometimes it's just slide this way and get 2 yards, right? And that's the growth and development that's going to happen when you're playing a sophomore quarterback. I've seen it for years. I played a bunch of young guys, and they're gung-ho. They really want to make the big play because they know they're capable of doing it. They've done it for years. They've seen it. But now it's, okay, the game's a little bit faster, right? You're starting to play some really good quality opponents. Now those choices have to go from being like 80%, you have to get that up into the 90s, so that way you eliminate the really, really bad play. Right,
because I think you totally nailed it on the head. He is a gamer through and through. Like, he always wants to make the big play, but you gotta rein that in a little bit, right? Like, it's good to have those big plays, but they don't happen on every play, and sometimes you need to set up the run or set up the pass or just kind of get something going first before you can hit the home run ball over the middle or get a deep fly downfield. Like, you got to have those little dink and dunk plays here first, and I think that will come with more time, because Angel's just started to take over the starting role, within the last few weeks, and we'll start to see that development from him. But I think that comes with time. You just gotta be comfortable in the environment, in the setting, make a couple completions here and there, get the offense into a little rhythm first, and then try the deep ball, and then try, to get out in space, do those big play things, because you can see the talent, you can see the potential there. Every single play, every time he touches the ball, something good can happen. It's just, how do you rein in those mistakes and the big play mindset to just try and, make the right play here and there, just as you mentioned?
Well, there's a real simple phrase. You don't want to coach the playmaker out of the player, right? And he is a playmaker, but there are times where it's risk reward, right? And that's the experience, that's the learning, that's the growth that has to happen, whereas you're still the playmaker that you're capable of being, right? And that's a fine line you got to walk, and it's always a tough one to coach, and you got to rein some guys in sometimes. But it comes from a lot more preparation. It comes from just seeing and gaining the experience, and it comes from sometimes the mundane plays, right? And not necessarily the big ones. It's, hey, I made the choice to throw this ball away. Great. There's the development you want to see. I'm not going to second guess that. Maybe he could have slid this way, tried to make a play this way. I'm not going to second guess that, right? It's just like when you're coaching a guy that's running the football. I'm not going to correct a move that you make that got us 5 yards when you could have got 10. I'm going to correct the one where you could have got us 50 yards, but you only got us 7. They're the ones you want to try to coach and correct, because you don't want to take the playmaker out of the player.
Exactly. I've never heard that statement, but I like it. I'm gonna keep that in the memory bank from now on. But I think that's a great point too. You want them to be able to be confident enough to make those big plays, but also rein them in so he can make the little plays here and there that set those big plays up. But the best way to do that, I think you've been doing that so far since he's been the starter, is you give him a bunch of opportunities to make every single play, right? He's thrown the ball 17 times this past weekend. He ran it 19 times. So the ball's in his hand on, like half the plays in the offense, right? I mean, he's getting consistent chances to touch the ball and make something happen. And the more he can touch the ball, the more good things will happen eventually down the road. Yeah,
you nailed it on the head. When it comes to like watching the film and making the corrections, I think it's more of, everyone always tends to go crazy about the big plays. Like, you avoided this, you made this huge one. I'm going to try to make the emphasis of, hey, you did the little thing right. That's the one I care about most. Right. And then it really starts getting in his mind, getting in his memory, because with each touch is a chance for growth. And you just got to remember that and understand that bad things sometimes happen, but it's all about your response. How are you going to respond to when something bad happens, right? The only thing you can control is the next play. So give it all for your next one, and we'll go back and we'll look at it.
Good life lessons there too, right? Not just in football. Here's a big overarching theme here. Let's talk a little bit about the receiving core now. Grayson Wendell leading the way with 4 catches, 44 yards through the air. But we got to see a little bit of Sebastian Wiggins as well. 2 catches for 24 yards for him. First time we've really seen him gain consistent action in the offense. How do you think the receiving core did? Do you think they continue to provide a little stability for Angel in the pocket? Tell me a little bit about how you think the receiving core performed this past weekend.
Again, it's the same thing. You're seeing the growth and development of all the guys within the offense, because some of the stuff that we do is different. But it's kudos because, again, you just talked about a handful of older guys, right, that have been through a couple different offenses. They've seen different styles of football, and they're really starting to click for them a little bit, right? They're understanding some of the minute coaching points that we're trying to get at. And one thing that I think gets lost is every single wideout that we have is all willing to block first, right? They bought into, like, hey, if I do my job on this one, when I get my opportunity to make the play, I'm going to make the play because I did my job the one before that set this one up, right? It's that cyclicalness of football. And those guys are really, and it also helps out too, because as nice as it is to have a true number one wide receiver, the guy that you can always target and do things, that's also easier on a defense, right? So now I think we're doing a good job spreading the ball around. Guys are touching different things. I mean, you mentioned it, Dempster getting the touchdown catch, right? The running back out of the backfield is always the guy that tends to be forgotten in the pass game. So you want to utilize them sometimes, especially in the high scoring areas. So it's a good thing for us because we have a bunch of different guys that are touching the football, different areas, moving themselves around a good bit, and it's really good for us on offense.
Let's talk about Kenneth Dempster a little bit. That we both mentioned, caught a touchdown pass, had 3 catches for 15 yards as the starting running back this past weekend. With no Micah Cobbs in the lineup, Dempster had to step up as RB1 this past weekend and did an admirable job, especially in the pass game with that touchdown catch. Talk a little bit about Kenneth Dempster and how he provided a little spark to the offense.
We knew going in that Cobbsy probably wasn't going to play, so KD and Jake Wagner, were both going to split some reps and get some playing time and do some different things, and it was good to see them get some reps. I think they played really well. The one thing that gets lost, KD had a couple of nice blocks and pass protection, and he's not the world's biggest human,
right.
but he's going to act like he's 6'5", and he's going to try hard. Again, same thing, younger guys that are really now getting a chance to play. So with each rep, they're starting to see some things a little bit more, and that's more practice even than the game, right? As talented as Cobbs is, you want to have multiple guys because injuries do happen, things happen.
Of course.
So we were happy with the growth that those guys really showed by getting a couple of reps that they really hadn't gotten up to this point other than in practice.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think all these game reps are definitely going to help with the upcoming schedule because this is the last home game for a while. The next home game on November 2nd, which means the next 2 weeks are on the road for you guys. Let's talk about the upcoming game this weekend on the road at Dickinson, another conference opponent for you guys. Tell me a little bit about this Red Devil team, what you've seen from them so far. Have you done any film study on them? And what they're looking like, how you're going to prepare for this weekend matchup.
Dickinson's always going to be well coached. I've known Coach Fordyce. He actually was at McDaniel when I was being recruited in high school, so I've known Coach Fordyce for years. I worked with him at Susquehanna. Coach Knapp, their offensive coordinator, worked with him as well. So, again, I have a really good relationship with those guys, and I know the way they coach the game of football, right? The guys are going to be prepared. They're going to be ready. They're going to have a really good game plan. They're going to try to utilize themselves. So, again, it's Centennial Conference football, right? You got to come ready to play. You got to have a good week of practice because it's not like you're going out there going against someone that's really not going to put the time in, right? These are well-coached teams. They're really, really well-stacked rosters. They have good depth. You're getting into the point in the conference where you have to match it, right? You have to work hard every single day and really come to because they're going to be ready to play, and especially there's no easy ones in the conference. Right. So it doesn't matter who you're playing. And everyone has good athletes. Everyone has players at each spot. They were recruited to go there. There are football players in the Centennial. Right? That at the end of the day, that's all you need to say because if you're starting at a Centennial Conference school, you can probably start at a lot of other schools in Division III football.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's one of those simple things that you're getting there. You just got to prepare to play the best you can.
Yeah. Well, you've had a couple of road games already, and you've already had a road game in the Centennial. And that one was a Friday night match on the road at Gettysburg, a longtime rival. And even though that one was a loss as well, you stayed competitive throughout. What's the difference now that you've got a road game on a Saturday? It's a standard road game. You've got the experience playing under the lights with added pressure, given that it's a weeknight game. This time it's just a standard road Saturday game. Is the preparation any different? How are you treating that? And do you think that having that road game on a Friday night kind of helped your team with the game development a little bit more now that you've had that pressure of playing on the road on a Friday?
I wouldn't say it's so much pressure. I think it's more of the guys know what to expect. They know the schedule that we follow. They know they essentially treat it like a business trip, right? Like, if you're flying cross country for a business meeting, right? You have to be at the airport at this time. Your flight leaves at this time, right? That full itinerary. The guys have been through it. They know. But I think, again, it doesn't matter what situation you're going in because I think it might be their homecoming. I'm not sure. It's that time of year where schools have homecoming. So no matter what the situation is, right? You're hopping on a bus. You're waking up early. You're getting breakfast in you, and you're going to travel to someone else's place to play the game you love, right? That's all that matters is you get a chance to play the game. But I've been really pleased with us on the road and the focus that we've had, right? From the time we've had our practice the day before to the meetings that we have to the guys, like every trip that we've had, we've left ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one of those little tidbits that you want to have, right? Where someone's not behind, someone's not late, right? We've actually not just been on schedule, we've been ahead of schedule going all the way back to our scrimmage. So that shows the guys are focused and they're ready to play. We just have to do the preparation leading up to it.
Yeah, great attention to detail too. Everybody's on the same page, and a lot of those things when you travel for a road game can apply to playing the actual game itself. Attention to detail, showing up on time, doing the little things correct every time, being a part of the team, not staggering around, being late or something. Like, all those things can apply not just to the travel schedule but to how the game plays out on the field as well. I think that's a pretty good analogy. But we'll go ahead and wrap this segment up. Skylar, thanks so much for coming on once again. Any parting words for us in this segment?
No, I appreciate it. Like I said, the guys are playing very, very hard. They're working hard. You can see the growth and development week in and week out, watching on film. And us as a coaching staff, I sit back and you're very pleased of where we're going. Because you look back to where things have been, it's like, guys, we're taking our lumps right now. Right? Just learn from the little mistakes and keep things moving forward because everyone sees it, right? We had like 30 recruits of the game this past weekend. They can see it. They can feel the energy. It's going in the direction we want. It's not showing on the scoreboard, but it's showing in our building. It's showing within our meetings. It's showing at practice. It's just now we have to get it to where it's showing on the scoreboard at the end of the game on Saturdays.
Rome wasn't built in a day. That's what
ain't that the truth? I've said it before.
The old saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. Well, I'm very excited to see the continued growth and development of Angel Granado, too, as well. He got the ball over 30 times this past weekend, both on the ground and through the air. Really excited to see how he continues to grow from another strong performance this past weekend. Excited to see the defense as well on the road against another Centennial team. They've been a shutdown unit from start to finish all year this year. Excited to see them on the field again. Skylar, thanks so much for coming back on today.
Hey, appreciate it. Go Green Terror.
Skylar Fultz, head coach of the McDaniel Green Terror football program. As always, great today. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll take a break and come back for our second segment in just a moment with Ed DeVincent, the athletic director. I was going to say head coach, athletic director for Liberty High School right here in Carroll County. Sports Talk at the Island Green is back after this.
Welcome to Island Green, Westminster. The Pub and Grill offers a variety of food in a family-friendly atmosphere. Live music, private suites, miniature golf. Learn more at islandgreenwestminster.com. Island Green, Westminster.
My name's Cooper Sheeler. I'm a senior at Winters Mill, and I'm here interning at the Community Media Center. I recently saw this opportunity because I was playing football over at Winters Mill, and I saw the Community Media Center filming and broadcasting a couple of our games. So I thought that was a really cool way to connect with the community, and I really wanted to be a part of that. Pretty much what I do throughout the day is I help with graphics throughout their game on segments and game of the week, and I also help out prepare stats for all the seasons, the spring and the winter and the fall. I update all of those, and I pretty much go around and I can just help out. I can help out at games when they're preparing for a game of the week. I've done a couple podcasts here at Community Media Center. I would highly recommend people come in here for an internship. It's a lot of fun. The people that work here are really nice, and you get to experience a lot of cool things that you've probably never done before.
Hey there, I'm Pat Stetzer.
And I'm Michael Duffy, inviting you to join us for The Score and more.
Each week we'll talk about high school sports in Carroll County. We'll share information about upcoming games, highlight coaches and athletes, and much more.
We'll even try to have a little fun along the way. Don't miss The Score and More podcast, presented by CM Sportsnet.
The Score and More Sports podcast is available online at carrollmediacenter.org and on a variety of podcast channels.
Brought to you by Farmers and Merchants Bank.
joined us here today. Ed, thanks so much for being our guest today.
Thanks for having me. This is it's awesome. Representing local sports is a good thing.
Absolutely. This is a large reason of why we do this, just to bring more attention to all of the programs in Carroll County. And, we have you on here today to talk about how your whole athletic department has gone as a whole this year, how your teams during the fall season have done. So we'll start with that. How do you think this fall season has gone for Liberty High School and for all of your teams on campus?
I think it's been an exciting fall season so far. Besides the weather, having the 13 straight days of rain and having to have a lot of makeup games and so forth, it's been fun to watch. Again, this was the only administrative job I wanted to have. I get to watch kids doing what they want to do.
Yeah.
And just watching them, succeed, their hard work pay off on the field or on the court. Wherever it may be, it's fun to watch, and the fall season's been going great. The last week of the regular season is this week for some sports.
It's crazy, isn't it?
So boys soccer, girls soccer, and field hockey, the last week for games that would count towards playoff seeding is this week, and then next week volleyball, and then of course football. We have a few more weeks left in the regular season, but so far so good. Football right now 4-2. They're 4-0 in the county.
Yeah.
They have a big game this week coming up with South Carroll, and then we have Westminster and Century. So all three games are going to be difficult games. Our boys and girls soccer teams, are doing very well and have huge games tomorrow night versus Century High School, which is our rival right down a mile down the street from where Liberty is. Field hockey had another win today. They have one loss on the regular season. And volleyball's been very competitive. Golf has the county championships this week. So everything is really kind of getting, accelerated as the season is nearing the end.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about you personally now and how you got into this position as the AD at Liberty and how this experience has been from an administrative standpoint for you so far.
So this is my 32nd year at Liberty High School. I taught social studies and I was a coach until I became AD. Actually, my first 2 years as athletic director, I still coached. I still was the head coach of the boys soccer team. Yeah. And then when we became administrative, that's when I became just the full-time athletic director. So I've been full-time athletic director since 2008. So it's I'm Liberty. I'm blue and gold. It's again 32 years goes quick. And like I said before, this was the only administrative job that I wanted. I enjoy working with kids. I enjoy seeing kids doing what they love to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've had almost not quite 20 years, but it's starting to get there, right? In this position, how have you seen high school athletics change in that time since you've become the athletic director? I mean, 2008, a lot of things can change, over a 15-plus year period like that. Have there been any major changes at Liberty since you've taken over? Have you seen the high school landscape in Carroll County change at all since your time here?
I just think, like everywhere else, the athletes are becoming better each and every year. We have tremendous coaches that, develop these athletes, but there's so much specific individual training that goes on for their sports. Right. Huge difference in how important club sports are now to kind of work that out with, the high school landscape. Because it becomes difficult at times. So you have kids that, let's say they're playing fall soccer, playing boys soccer at Liberty High School, but they're still playing club lacrosse tournaments on weekends.
Right.
So, sometimes, it's good they're playing, they're staying involved. To me, they stay out of trouble when they're more involved. But I think at times, sometimes you end up seeing some, some more injuries because of it. And some overuse injuries with just focusing on one sport. I think we have less three-sport athletes than we did in 2008 that we do right now in 2024.
Yeah, it's an interesting point because, we've seen a lot recently how these kids will just play year-round, essentially. Even out of season, they're still training, they're still playing in travel leagues, or they're still playing club ball or something. It's especially true in a sport like baseball where you're trying to, continue to develop your pitching arm, and so guys will just play year-round. Same with, lacrosse. It's basketball. It's true in basically every sport. I definitely agree with you that that's totally a change that's happened over the last, 15, 20 years, is that it really is becoming more of a year-round thing. You're just constantly training and trying to improve even out of season. But I think, in this current high school landscape, how have you guys been able to handle those changes, and how have you been able to handle those changes in your time at Liberty?
I mean, there are rules. There are state rules on you can't skip a high school game to go to a club tournament unless the coach and the athletic director, give permission. And again, I think some flexibility also with their coaches and with our families. If a kid's playing boys soccer, but he's going to college for lacrosse and has a huge ID camp, he's going to miss a Friday practice. I think our coaches are flexible, saying, hey, we know that lacrosse is your number one sport, go to this ID camp and, you won't be at practice that day. So I think it's just kind of flexibility and really communication, everything. Yeah. It's got to be open communication between the parents, the coaches, and the athletes, and myself sometimes sure. if I have to get involved with it.
So we've had a couple of ADs on the show over the last few weeks, but most of them have come into their positions relatively recently, within the last couple of years. But you've been at Liberty since 2008. You've been involved with Liberty High School for over 30 years at this point. I mean, how easy was the transition for you from being a coach to an administrator, and now that you've seen, over 15 years as an athletic director, just explain to me what the county has been like over the last 15 years, how you've seen the county grow and develop. Because again, a lot of the people that we've talked to the last few weeks are new, but you've got the experience. You've seen the county. You've seen your team, the other teams within the county change. Just kind of tell me what that process has been like for you.
Well, in terms of, first of all, I'm the oldest one, so I guess I am the most experienced one. But yeah, we've had a lot of turnover with athletic directors. We've had great athletic directors that I've worked with in the past that were my mentors, and now, I'm trying to mentor our new, new athletic directors, new crop of athletic directors, and they're awesome. I mean, I know I'm biased, but I think we have the best athletic directors in terms of a county throughout the state. Yeah, they just do a tremendous job. As far as how it's changed, I think when I first took over as athletic director, what I was expecting was I'm going to get fields ready. I'm going to be hiring coaches. I'm going to be mentoring coaches. I'm going to be talking to athletes. And that still happens. But I think the change over the last 15 years is we really have gone from, kind of that, manual labor, but motivator, making sure all the kids are doing the things they need to do, to, we've kind of like gotten more in the administrative realm now, which includes like we're in charge of use of facilities from outside groups. So it's not just from our school groups. Yeah. But, a lot more of the technology has changed. I remember when I first started coaching their AD, we collected paper physicals from everybody, and that would take the first 45 minutes of your first day of tryouts. Yeah, right. Now everything's online, but it's still a matter of making sure everything is online and registered, that they have the proper physical, that they are approved to play by a doctor, because you don't want somebody slipping through the cracks and then all of a sudden something happens and it comes back on us.
Sure, yeah, but I think it's impressive, one, that you've been able to have such a successful and widely renowned athletic program at Liberty for so long, and that you've been able to adapt to those changes, right? Because that's how you continue to stay successful, is you see how the landscape is evolving, you see what other schools in the county are doing, and you all try to work together cohesively to keep things afloat and to keep things moving along. And, Liberty has not lost a beat in years. I mean, your teams are still super competitive, among the best in the county year after year. And I think that's indicative of having a culture and having things, organized and having things moving in the right direction. I think that comes with a steady hand in leadership, and that's definitely what I've seen you provide the rest of the programs in your time at Liberty.
I appreciate that, but, even when I was a coach, you're only as good as your players. Sure. A great coach is not going to make a team with little talent be a state championship team, but they can make a team with a little talent be competitive. Yeah. So I'm only as good as my coaches and the athletes we hear, and I've been fortunate enough to, have a lot of consistency within my coaching staffs, and just a lot of great coaches, and that they understand it's more than coaching the X's and O's of the game, but it's coaching the things that are going to help you be successful in life, the values that are going to make you a successful man or young woman.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, everyone we've had on from the high school scene here in Carroll County has harped on that being the most important thing, and that's how you judge the success of a program, is not by wins and losses necessarily, but by the quality of the athletes and the people that you develop from your system. And I think that's great that you still have that same message and that you've been preaching it for so many years at this point. But let's switch gears specifically and talk about football. You guys are 4-2 right now on the season, undefeated in Carroll County play, and you've got a big game coming up this weekend against South Carroll. Tell me a little bit about the football team this year and what you've seen from them, and have they surprised you at all? Have they kind of, played to your expectations at this point in the season? Tell me your thoughts about how the football team's performed.
I think the coaches were excited coming into the season, and they had a tough first 2 opening weeks. Losing to Walkersville, who's a perennial power in the state, and then losing a game against Boonesboro that they probably could have pulled out, but just made too many little mistakes, kind of like the coach from McDaniel was talking about, with his team. But the last 4 weeks, and again, sometimes when you lose games early, things can go bad quickly.
Right.
So the kids, the coaching staff alone, they kept it together. They got to 1 win. And then you back it up with another. And now you've got all the confidence in the world to, continue to, pile up wins on top of each other. And again, they're on a roll right now. But again, it's like the NFL. It's a week-to-week league. So you still got to come out and play. And I always say the most consistent thing about teenage athletes is their inconsistency. Yeah. And the teams that are the least inconsistent are usually the ones that are most successful.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've had Coach Larry come on the show before and talk about football, and he's mentioned the dynamic passing offense and how it's been able to put together some great performances over the last couple of weeks. And I've definitely seen a lot of production through the air for the Lion offense. And against a South Carroll team this upcoming week, I think that offense can definitely continue to grow and develop and make those big plays.
Yeah, and that's the hope. I mean, it's still a rivalry. We're 10 miles apart. Our offense has been, clicking. Chase has done a great job at quarterback. He's got receivers like Tristan West, David Akinboye, and our running game got going last week with, Kevin Poole and Austin Saffron and some others. It's been exciting to watch how, now they're creating some balance, which it makes it more difficult to defend.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we talked a little bit about football. We can switch gears here. As you mentioned when you first came on, we can talk a little soccer, since that was your background. You were the former soccer coach at Liberty. They've got a big match coming up this weekend against Century. I think that's
tomorrow night, yes.
Yeah.
So our boys are at Century tomorrow night. Both teams right now are undefeated in the county.
That's great.
And the girls' teams, both teams, our girls have a couple ties, but both teams are undefeated in the county also. So it should be an exciting because a lot of these kids, if they don't play on the same club teams together, they're playing on opposite club teams and they play against here, but they all know each other.
Sure.
So it's going to be a battle during the game. Then after the game, it's over with, and they'll be friends again. But it will be a battle on the field for both games tomorrow night.
Yeah, definitely excited to see how those two matches turn out, Ed. You've been great. Thank you so much. I'll conclude with this one final question that I like to ask everyone from the county as we continue on with the show. But at the end of this year, if you look back on the year, what do you think would make this a successful year in your mind as athletic director?
There's so much that goes into that. I would say that I want to look back and see that every team played the best that they could, played the hardest that they could. They left everything out on the court and the field, and they were good sportsmen. Sportsmanship is huge. And again, that they're good young men and women, people of high character. I think that's more important than even the wins and losses.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we've talked to a couple ADs, we've talked to coaches before, and that seems to be the most important thing. Wins and losses, especially at the high school level, can vary wildly because the talent pool is very similar, and a lot of kids have known each other and played each other for years. And so, you don't have as much consistency at the high school level as you do at the college or the pro level, of course. But the best way to judge success because of that invariability is not because of how many games you win or lose, but the content and the character of your athletes, of the kids that suit up for you and that wear your colors every week. I totally agree. I think that's the most important thing. And everyone else has also echoed those same sentiments, that's the most important way to judge a successful season. And I think all of the schools in the county, Liberty especially, and everyone has really exemplified those values of trying to make quality people and instill quality values in your athletes week in and week out.
100% agree.
Yeah, absolutely. Ed, thank you so much. You've been terrific. Really glad to have you on. And we'll keep tabs on the soccer match this week against Liberty and, of course, the football match against South Carroll this upcoming weekend.
All right, thank you.
Ed DeVincent, Athletic Director at Liberty High School, our guest here in Segment 2. We'll take a break and come back and talk Maryland sports at large after this on Sports Talk at the Island Green.
Welcome to Island Green, Westminster. The Pub and Grill offers a variety of food in a family-friendly atmosphere. Live music, private suites, miniature golf. Learn more at islandgreenwestminster.com. Island Green, Westminster.
My name's Cooper Sheeler. I'm a senior at Winters Mill, and I'm here interning at the Community Media Center. I recently saw this opportunity because I was playing football over at Winters Mill, and I saw the Community Media Center filming and broadcasting a couple of our games. So I thought that was a really cool way to connect with the community, and I really wanted to be a part of that. Pretty much what I do throughout the day is I help with graphics throughout their Game On segments and Game of the Week, and I also help out prepare stats for all the seasons, the spring and the winter and the fall. I update all of those, and I pretty much go around and I can just help out. I can help out at games when they're preparing for a game of the week. I've done a couple podcasts here at Community Media Center. I would highly recommend people come in here for an internship. It's a lot of fun. The people that work here are really nice, and you get to experience a lot of cool things that you've probably never done before.
Hey there, I'm Pat Stetzer.
And I'm Michael Duffy, inviting you to join us for The Score and more.
Each week we'll talk about high school sports in Carroll County. We'll share information about upcoming games, highlight coaches and athletes, and much more.
We'll even try to have a little fun along the way. Don't miss the Score and More podcast presented by CM Sportsnet.
The Score and More Sports podcast is available online at carrollmediacenter.org and on a variety of podcast channels.
Brought to you by Farmers and Merchants Bank.
Back to Sports Talk at the Island Green. Avery Newport here, just by myself for the final segment of tonight's show. Maryland sports at large. We'll talk some Ravens, some Maryland Terrapins football, and we'll preview a little more of the MLB playoffs for you as well before we say goodnight on this Monday evening. Ravens getting a big win at home this past weekend against one of the hottest teams in the NFL, the Washington Commanders, 30-23, the final score from Baltimore this past weekend on Sunday. Derrick Henry had another outstanding performance on the ground, 24 carries, 132 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground for him. Lamar, another solid performance as well for the reigning league MVP, 323 yards and a touchdown through the air for Lamar Jackson. This was a supremely hyped matchup between the Commanders and the Ravens, matched up with two potential MVP candidates this season, Lamar Jackson and Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for Washington. Daniels has gotten off to a tremendous start this season, but the Ravens defense mostly held him in check. He did have another good performance through the air with 2 touchdowns and over 200 passing yards. No turnovers for Jaden Daniels. But the Ravens defense starting to right the ship here a little bit. There were some concerns about Baltimore's defense in the first couple of weeks of the season, and I think those defensive concerns are still valid at this point in the year. But the Ravens proved a lot, I think, with this past weekend's win. They beat a good team at home, a team that was one of the hottest teams in the NFL coming into this past weekend in Washington. They're 4-1 coming into this game, and the Ravens mostly shut them down. I mean, in the second half, it was a bit of a different story. Washington was able to make it a one-score game late, and they only lost by 7, going down the stretch there. But the Ravens were in control from start to finish. We saw Mark Andrews show up for the first time in weeks, first time we've really ever mentioned his name on this show, at least for the last couple of weeks. He caught a touchdown from Lamar, and he was pretty active in the offense as well. Isaiah Likely's been the tight end that's been seeing most targets from Lamar over the past couple of weeks this season. But Zay Flowers had another great game at wide receiver for the Ravens, 9 catches, 132 yards through the air for him, a great performance on my fantasy team. Thank you, Zay, for getting me the win this past weekend. But I think there's certainly no questions about the Ravens offensively after this past weekend. Another 30-point performance after putting up 41 against the Bengals in Cincinnati. A great showing on the road against the Dallas Cowboys a couple weeks ago as well. So the offense is picking up right where it left off from last year. Again, offensive coordinator Todd Monken still proving that he's got the offense moving in the right direction after a really great offensive year last year. Lamar still in the MVP conversation as well. After the 0-2 start, wasn't so sure whether Lamar would continue to get those MVP recognition votes. But he's 4-2 right now. He's won the last 4 games in a row for the Ravens, and I think Baltimore is right back in the conversation of being the best team in the AFC, right up there with the Kansas City Chiefs as being 1-2 in the AFC right now. And even though the Commanders came out with a loss this past weekend, Washington I still think has a chance to be the best team in the NFC East this year. I mean, we saw the Cowboys get annihilated at home by the Lions yesterday, 47-9. Again, the Eagles did not look great either, even in a win against the Cleveland Browns, 20-16. So Washington, I think, is still in prime position to take control of the NFC East, even after a loss this past weekend. But just a really fun, competitive game from start to finish. It was close throughout. The Ravens were definitely in control from start to finish, but Washington kept it close from the whole way through, really. And this was going to be a test for both teams to see how real each team was. If the Ravens could continue their hot stretch during this season after starting off 0-2, and how legit the Commanders were after getting off to such a great start too. They played a couple of easy teams. They beat up on the Browns. They beat the Bengals, neither of which have gotten off to great starts this year either. So I think there's a lot for both of these teams to prove, and ultimately I think both teams kind of proved some good positives on both sides. The Ravens were able to get the defense under control and slow down one of the hottest offenses in the league. But the Commanders proved that they're for real and they can hang with a real team like the Ravens. So, fun game. Really glad that the Ravens obviously were able to fix some of their defensive problems and shut down Jaden Daniels. But, again, that Washington offense is not going to miss a beat after this week. Really excited to see how Jaden Daniels and the Commanders offense continue to develop as the season progresses. The Ravens next week on the road against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's going to be certainly a really fun game to watch. That's a Monday night game, too, as well, on the road in Tampa Bay. You got to admire what Baker Mayfield is doing for the Bucs at this point. A 50-point game on the road against a division rival in the Saints this past weekend. 4 touchdowns through the air for Baker. Wondered coming into this season whether Mayfield's season last year was a fluke or if you really had something going here. And with losing their offensive coordinator, Dave Canellis, who's now the coach for the Carolina Panthers, the head coach, there were some legitimate questions about what the Buccaneers would be like this season. But under new offensive coordinator Liam Cohen, they have not missed a beat at all. And in some ways, I think they're even better. I mean, Chris Godwin is one of the leading receivers in the NFL at this point, had 2 touchdown catches in the win against the Saints on Sunday. They look like a absolute power at this point in the NFC. That offense is a juggernaut, and I'm really interested to see if the Ravens can keep up the defensive progress that they made against the Commanders this past week. Because again, the Ravens defense has been a little shaky to start this year, to say the least. And the fact that they were able to rein in Jaden Daniels and one of the hottest offenses in the league is a great sign. But can they do it 2 weeks in a row against the Tampa Bay team that just put up 50 this past weekend? So a lot of questions still for the Ravens, even though they've won 4 straight. Can they keep it going on the road against the top team in the NFC in the Bucs? And also a team that's playing for something bigger than just a win on a Monday night. Of course, the terrible hurricanes that have ravaged Florida. You had Helene that went through Florida, and then you just had Milton this past week, absolutely wreaking havoc on those residents in Tampa Bay. So you have the Bucs that are playing for a much bigger cause than just football. They're playing for the whole support of a city that's still trying to heal after such a terrible tragedy this past week. So really interesting to see how the Ravens will be able to handle that pressure of being on the road against a great team in the NFC, but also a team that's playing for a bigger cause too, that's playing for a city that's going through some extremely tough times right now. Really interested to see how the Ravens will handle those pressures coming up this week. But we'll stop with the Ravens talk, and we'll move on here to some Maryland Terrapin football. The Terps this past weekend, their annual Friday night home game in front of the home fans at Byrd Stadium in College Park, losing at home to Northwestern 37-10. The final score. Billy Edwards Jr. had another decent game through the air, but man, the turnovers just really killer for the Terps. Of course, the fumble in the fourth quarter that ultimately really put the game away for the Wildcats. Billy Edwards also had an interception as well. Lots of turnovers in this game, just ultimately sunk Maryland and any hope they had. But the passing offense was able to make those big plays. I mean, Billy Edwards had another near 300-yard passing game, just didn't do enough to keep the ball in their possession. And ultimately, against a team like Northwestern that has a very opportunistic defense, you make those mistakes, and they'll pounce on them. So not a great showing from the Terps at all, and it continues an unfortunate trend for Maryland football in Friday night home games. I mean, we've seen the last couple of years, Maryland's just not been able to get it done in these Friday home games. They lost to Iowa a couple of years ago. I remember that game very vividly. Talia Tungavailoa threw 5 interceptions in a 51-14 loss at home. That was a Friday night game. And then a couple of years before that, losing at home to Penn State 59-0. So this is an unfortunate trend for the Terps, is that these Friday night games just don't go their way a lot of times. They played Virginia in their Friday night game last year, and they won that game, fortunately, but I was at that game. I was there as a student, and I saw them get down 2 scores to the Cavaliers in the first quarter. I think the first 5 minutes of that game, they were already losing 14-0. They came back and won. They got a kickoff return touchdown right afterwards, so they got the momentum back on their side, and they were able to right the ship and win that game at home. But Friday night just has not been kind to the Terps, unfortunately. They'll have a chance to get back on track with their homecoming game this upcoming weekend against USC. Believe it or not, USC, Big Ten team, playing Maryland in a conference home game for homecoming. Didn't ever think I'd say that, but this is the current reality that we live in college football in 2024. USC, same record as the Terps, 3-3 on the year. The Trojans, of course, had a lot of hype coming into the season, but the hype train has kind of slowed down a little bit. They've hit a couple roadblocks in the Big Ten. So we'll see how both of those teams can kind of resurrect their seasons here with Maryland at a crossroads, I think. The offense has still proven to be one of the best in the conference, especially with these new teams from the West Coast coming in, bringing all their high-powered offense and their high-flying passing attacks. Maryland's been able to keep up that momentum. Just the defense has not been there yet, and the defense is still a work in progress. So definitely interested to see how that homecoming game works out for Maryland. If the offense continues its hot streak, if the defense can shut down a USC offense that's had some low moments so far this season, or if the Trojans can kind of get their footing in the Big Ten and get a win on the road against Maryland. But that one's coming up this weekend for the Terps, a 4 o'clock game on FS1 on this Saturday, October 19th. That's going to wrap up our Maryland Sports at Large coverage. And that will wrap up our show tonight for the Sports Talk at the Island Green right here on Carroll Media Center. I'm Avery Newport, your host. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. Got to give a shout-out to our guests, Ed DeVincent, the athletic director at Liberty High School, for coming on, talking about his teams and about the county at large. Appreciate him for coming on tonight. And then Skylar Fultz, head coach for McDaniel Football. Appreciate him coming on, as always, to talk Green Terror football. That'll do it for our episode tonight of Sports Talk at the Island Green. Bills-Jets on Monday Night Football. You got the NLCS in Major League Baseball playoffs. The Mets beating the Dodgers in the 8th inning last I checked. And Game 1 of the ALCS starting tonight, too, between the Guardians and the Yankees. Lots of sports action coming up on Monday evening. We won't want to keep you any further, so we'll say goodnight from the Island Green right here on Carroll Media Center. Enjoy your Monday.